Pharmaceutical is involved in a new and exciting adventure. Dr. John Maddie explains.
Hello, I'm Dr. John Maddie. For the past 40 years, I've had the opportunity to be in touch with some of the most marvelous technology of the 20th century. As the Chief of Operations on the Skylab program and later in my work on the space station, I've witnessed scientific know-how capable of putting astronauts into Earth orbit and sustaining their lives. Recently, I've had the privilege of being associated with a different kind of scientific team, a team attacking a problem of life and death right here on Earth. They are attacking a disease that is one of the oldest in the world and still causes severe sickness among 300 million people a year and almost 3 million deaths annually. This disease is malaria. We are living in an era where scientific technology has astounded the world. It is a paradox to note that almost half the world's population is still threatened by this disease. We Americans seldom hear of malaria. You may have thought that modern science had wiped it out. There was a time when that seemed possible, until we discovered how well the malaria parasite could adapt itself to resist drug treatments. Two maps will tell the whole story. In 1983, chloroquine, the drug of choice for malaria treatment, was effective in almost every part of the world, except a few places where the parasite had become drug resistant. By 1992, just 9 years later, the map has changed dramatically. Now, chloroquine has become ineffective in 85% of the world in which malaria strikes. What is needed is a new and effective drug for the treatment of malaria, a drug for the 21st century. I would like to introduce you to a young, aggressive company called Biomed Pharmaceuticals who have come up with a solution. Come join me in a visit to Irvine, California, and meet with the President and CEO, Dr. Lloyd Tran.
On April 17, 1995, Biomed signed an agreement with the Sichuan Wuling Pharmaceutical Company to form a joint venture in which Biomed has invested capital and know-how with the Chinese partners to develop and manufacture the first oral formulation of an anti-malarial drug named Artemether. Artemether is a derivative of a natural substance known as Artemisinin, obtained from a plant called Chenhao-su. It has been used for the cure of malaria for almost 2,000 years in China. Natural compounds play an important role in the pharmaceutical industry. Over 40 of the most successful drugs have been originally derived from natural plants. That includes drugs for the treatment of cancer, such as vincristine, Texol, and andriamycin, plus, of course, aspirin, and the first antimalarial drug, quinine, all derived from Mother Nature. The Artemisinin plant is grown in the remote high mountains of Wuling, China. 90% of the entire world supply of Artemether is produced here. The terms of the joint venture have granted Biomed the exclusive marketing rights for both Artemisinin and Artemether for a period of 20 years. Biomed will market the first and only oral formulation of Artemether in soft gelatin capsules under the trademark Artemed. Dr. Maddie interviews the president of Biomed to find out more about this new hope for the treatment of malaria.
Dr. Tran, I understand that Artemether is already in use in China and Vietnam.
Over 2 million people have been successfully treated for malaria by the injection of Artemether. The literature is full of evidence of the effectiveness and safety of the drug.
There are more than 400 clinical publications confirming the success of Artemether. Journal articles often read like headlines: 3 times as effective, reduced the death rate by a factor of 5, Artemether proven successful against cerebral malaria, The studies continue to come forth.
There's a 1994 article I want to quote from by Dr. Nicholas White, the principal investigator, who said, "There is no doubt that artemisinin derivatives are the most rapidly acting of all anti-malarial drugs."
There's also a statement about toxicity of the drug. The same article mentioned by Dr. White that there is no significant toxicity reported.
Comparing toxicity studies in the Merck Index, Dr. Tran found that the oral formulation of artemisinin was almost 5 times safer than aspirin. An entire treatment of 10 Artemed capsules is less toxic than 1 aspirin tablet.
Before we decided to make investment in the joint venture, we did our due diligence very carefully. We even went to Geneva to consult with the World Health Organization, and the results are very positive.
Dr. Tran asked one of his colleagues, Dr. James Nafee, to also go to Geneva. Nafee was so impressed by his own investigation that he decided to join the Biomed team.
I traveled to Geneva and met with key personnel at World Health, from the Assistant Director General to the head of the malaria unit. All of these people are terribly interested in Artemether as a solution to the malaria problem. They're interested because the principal drug of choice now, chloroquine, has lost its effectiveness because of the mutation of the parasite which leads to the malaria infection.
There's a huge window of opportunity. Here are 300 million people suffering and dying, mostly little kids. And here's a drug that works, sitting in the high mountains of China, waiting for someone to mass produce it and take it to the world.
Yes, we need the oral formulation, something easy to use, people can buy at a local store, and give it to the baby. Save the precious life. That's why I decided to go to China.
There's no airport in the high mountains of Wuling, China. The only way there was to fly over 10,000 miles, changing planes 4 times, and then travel 2 days by car over a dirt road winding through the mountains. After a full week of intense negotiations, Biomed and Wuling Pharmaceutical signed the joint agreement. There was an elaborate ceremony. Under the terms of the agreement, Biomed owns the controlling 51% share of the joint venture, while the Chinese partners own 49%. Biomed will appoint 3 members of the board of directors and the Chinese 2 members. Very importantly, Biomed will appoint the general manager of the factory in China. The raw material, crystals of Artemether, will be shipped to California and encapsulated into soft gelatin capsules by an FDA-approved factory. A franchising program has also been established. Overseas pharmaceutical companies have already expressed interest in a franchise relationship in which Biomed would provide a team of experts to help them set up a factory which would meet the GMP standards of the United States Food and Drug Administration.
So, what's the next step?
We are going to file the new drug application with the FDA under the orphan drug designation.
To help oversee the process of FDA approval, Biomed has added another member to their team. Dr. Daniel Ikeda is a physician specializing in infectious diseases. He recognized immediately that Artemed might receive a fast-track approval from the FDA. Because the disease affects less than 200,000 Americans each year, it qualifies for special consideration under the Orphan Drug Act.
The meaning of this is that, number one, the approval process for this new drug will be quicker than by the standard protocol. As a result of this, the company that successfully submits and obtains orphan drug status for Artemether will have 7 years of U.S. protection. And because of the GATT agreement, will have 7 years of protection in all countries participating in GATT.
How big is the market for the drug?
The market for anti-malarial drugs is very large. Chloroquine is the third most commonly used drug, just after aspirin and Tylenol in the world. There are 300 million doses of anti-malarial drugs used per year.
Biomed expects to gain a 10% share of the market in the next several years. At that point, they project sales of over $200 million annually. Profits before taxes are estimated at over $20 million.
As I have come to know you, Lloyd, I realize that for you, this project is not just about making big profits for the company, but it is also about making a big difference for the world, saving lives.
If we can bring forth a product that can save many human lives and at the same time provide a good yield to our investors, then our mission on this planet Earth will not be in vain.
If you think you might like to be part of this project to bring hope to 300 million people suffering with malaria, we invite you to call us and discuss how you can help. Artemed will be available for distribution and sales by November 1995.